a quiet hum beneath the surface of your everyday, a feeling that something is fundamentally fractured. And tonight, in this quiet space, we're going to expose it. We're going to trace that faint, dissonant note all the way back to its origin, back to the brutal past of a person who goes crazy. A past that isn't just a memory, but a living, breathing architecture inside your nervous system. A blueprint for chaos that was drawn long before you had the words to name it. And if you're listening to this, if this quiet hour finds you staring at the ceiling or feeling that familiar cold tension in your chest, then you already know this isn't about melodrama. It's not about a Hollywood scream. It's about this specific feeling. This is the invisible wound, the one you learn to bandage with a smile, the one you learn to hide because the world doesn't have a language for the quiet unraveling of a soul that was never properly woven together in the first place. And this is the core of the brutal past of a person who goes crazy psychology fix. It's the understanding that this chaos is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to untangle. And that is the first, most profound step toward freedom. The moment you stop blaming yourself for the shrapnel still embedded in your psyche from a war you didn't start. Let's go deeper. The mind, your beautiful, intricate mind, didn't create this pattern out of malice or a desire to self-destruct. It created it as a fortress, a desperate, brilliant, and ultimately flawed survival strategy crafted in the fire of a childhood that demanded too much, too soon. A childhood where love felt conditional, where safety was a temporary truce, where you learned that being perfectly good or perfectly quiet or perfectly helpful was the only currency that could buy you a moment of peace. And so your nervous system, still wiring itself for the world, had to make a choice. Feel the full annihilating weight of that uncertainty, that fear, that grief, or build a labyrinth to contain it. And you brilliant child, you built a labyrinth. You compartmentalized the pain. You buried the authentic, messy, needy parts of yourself because they were deemed too much, too loud, too demanding. And in their place, you erected a persona, a capable, competent, seemingly together self that could navigate the world. But that exiled, hidden part of you, that wounded child, didn't die. It didn't disappear. It just went underground, and it took all of its raw, unprocessed emotion with it. All the terror, the rage, the bottomless sadness, and it lives there still, in the basement of your consciousness. And every so often, when the world feels too much like the past, when a current disappointment echoes an ancient abandonment, when a present-day criticism lands on the exact same nerve that was bruised decades ago, that exiled part kicks at the walls. It screams to be heard. And from the outside, it feels like you're going crazy. It feels like a sudden, inexplicable panic, a flood of rage over a minor inconvenience, a deep, soul-crushing despair that comes out of nowhere, but it is not out of nowhere. It is out of everywhere. It is a ghost from a brutal past rising to demand a proper burial. Pause. Notice what that just revealed in your body. That tightness in your jaw, that shallow breath. You've felt this before, haven't you? That ghost is present right now. Ask yourself this now. What was the first time you remember feeling this exact flavor of helplessness? Don't force an answer. Just let the question hang in the air and observe what image, what memory, however fragmented, floats to the surface. This is not about reliving the pain. It's about recognizing its fingerprint. And this fingerprint is left by hidden emotional triggers, which are not the loud, obvious things, not the job loss or the breakup, though they can be the match that lights the fuse. No, the real triggers are the silent echoes, the subtle recreations of that original, powerless state. It's the tone of voice your partner uses that is the same tone your dismissive parent used. It's the feeling of being overlooked in a meeting that feels exactly like being invisible at the family dinner table. It's the pressure of a deadline that recreates the impossible-to-please standard you internalized before you could even spell your own name. These are the landmines, and you walk through this field every single day, completely unaware of why you keep getting blown apart by seemingly small things. Why a canceled plan can send you into a spiral of worthlessness. Why a piece of constructive feedback can feel like a total annihilation of your character. Because to that exiled child part, it is the same annihilation. It's proof that you are, at your core, unlovable and flawed. And this is the engine of the madness. This is the feedback loop that keeps you trapped, where a present moment event gets filtered through a decades-old wound and comes out as catastrophic. Undeniable proof of your deepest, darkest fears. But here's the truth that can set you free. You are not your thoughts, and you are not that wounded child. You are the awareness that holds both. You are the adult who can now finally go into that basement and comfort that terrified part of you. You can bring the light of your present-day consciousness into that dark place and say, I see you, I hear you, you are safe now. This is the fundamental shift, the moment you stop being a victim of your internal weather and start becoming the compassionate witness of it. What no one tells you is that healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about changing your relationship to it. It's about building a bridge of compassion between who you are now and who you had to be then. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex was a high-flying software engineer, praised for his logic and calm under pressure. But at home, alone, he would have these intense, sudden bouts of rage over misplaced keys or a slow-loading web page. A rage that felt alien and terrifying. A rage that seemed to come from a different person. And in our work together, we traced it back, not to the keys, but to a childhood where his father, an alcoholic, would fly into unpredictable rages, and young Alex learned to be hyper-logical, hyper-controlled, as a way to never ever be like his father, to never lose control. But all that unexpressed fear and anger, all the times he wanted to scream but couldn't, it got stored away, and it would leak out in these seemingly irrational explosions over tiny things. Because the feeling of things being out of his control, even something as small as a misplaced object, was the trigger. It was the echo of that childhood chaos, and his mind, to protect him from the full memory of his father's violence, would instead give him this displaced, safe-to-express anger over a triviality. And the moment he saw the link, the moment he could say, this rage isn't about the keys, it's about little Alex feeling powerless and terrified, the spell was broken. The anger lost its power, because he could finally meet it with understanding instead of fear. You're starting to see it now, how the threads of the past are woven into the fabric of your present reactions. This is the first and most crucial weapon you must forge to break this cycle, the weapon of awareness. Step 1. Recognize the trigger. This is the moment of interception. It's not about stopping the feeling, but about catching it 1 second earlier than you did before. The next time you feel that familiar surge of anxiety, that tightening in your gut, that critical voice roaring to life, I want you to practice a simple grounding technique. Plant your feet firmly on the floor. Feel the soles of your feet connecting with the ground, and take one slow, deliberate breath. And as you breathe, simply name the feeling to yourself. This is panic, or this is shame, or this is old fear. Just name it. You are not the storm. You are the observer naming the weather. Step 2. Reframe the story. Once you've named the weather, you can question the forecast your mind is automatically generating. That story it's telling you, this is because I'm a failure, or they hate me, or I'm going to be abandoned, is an old recorded message. Ask yourself, is this 100% true? What is another, more compassionate explanation? Could this be a protective part of me that is trying to keep me safe by anticipating rejection? This reframing creates a tiny space, a crack in the solid wall of the narrative, where your adult, rational mind can enter. Step 3. Replace the pattern. This is where you actively rewire the neural pathway. After you've named the feeling and reframed the story, you introduce a micro-action of self-care. It could be placing a hand on your heart and saying, "I'm here with you, it's okay." It could be getting a glass of water. It could be stepping outside for 60 seconds of fresh air. This action, no matter how small, sends a new message to your nervous system. We are safe. We can handle this. We are not powerless. This is how you begin to end the brutal past of a person who goes crazy pattern tonight. Not with a grand sweeping gesture, but with these small, consistent acts of conscious kindness toward yourself. You feel it making sense already. This shift from being possessed by the feeling to being in relationship with it. Let's go deeper still, because awareness alone is not enough. You must also arm yourself with the second weapon, the weapon of emotional fluency. For so long, you've been taught that certain emotions are bad, dangerous, unacceptable, that anger makes you a bad person, that sadness makes you weak, that neediness makes you a burden. So you've built dams against these emotional rivers. But a dam doesn't make the river disappear. It just forces the water to find another, more destructive path. It leaks into your relationships as passive aggression. It floods your body as chronic pain or illness. It erupts as periods of intense depression or anxiety. Because emotions are energy in motion. They are meant to be felt, acknowledged, and allowed to pass through you, not stored in your tissues as toxic waste. The goal is not to control your emotions, but to become skilled at navigating them, to learn their language, to understand that anger is often a signal that a boundary has been crossed, that sadness is a signal of something that needs to be mourned, that anxiety is a signal of a perceived future threat. And when you can listen to these signals without judgment, you can address the root cause instead of fighting the symptom. Think of Maya, a therapist who was brilliant at holding space for others, but would collapse into utter despair and self-loathing after any minor professional mistake. A typo in an email could send her into a days-long spiral where she was convinced she was a fraud and a failure. And through exploring this, she discovered that this wasn't really about the mistake. It was about a deep, unprocessed grief. The grief of never having her own emotional world held or validated by her own parents. She was the classic parentified child, the little adult who had to manage her parents' emotions. And so her own mistakes felt catastrophic because, in her child mind, making a mistake meant the entire emotional system of her family would collapse. And she was carrying that unbearable weight still, as an adult. And the despair was the old grief of the little girl who was never allowed to just be a kid who messes up. And when she learned to sit with that grief, to actually welcome it, to cry for that little girl, the power of the despair over the typos vanished, because the real wound was finally being tended to. This is emotional fluency. It's learning the true meaning behind the emotional storms. Pause. Notice what emotion is most uncomfortable for you to feel. Is it anger, sadness, fear? You've felt this before, haven't you? The desire to numb it, to run from it. Ask yourself this now. What is that emotion trying to protect you from? What is it trying to tell you? Let's break down the steps for this weapon. Step 1. Recognize the trigger. This time, the trigger is the initial surge of a forbidden emotion. The flush of anger, the wave of sadness, the prickling of anxiety. Your old pattern is to contract, to suppress, to distract. Your new practice is to lean in, just a millimeter. Notice where you feel it in your body. Is it a heat in your chest? A lump in your throat? A weight in your stomach? Locate the physical sensation. Step 2. Reframe the story. The story your mind tells is, this feeling is dangerous. I can't handle this. Reframe it to, this is just a sensation in my body. It is a messenger. It will not last forever. I can breathe into it and make space for it. Thank the emotion for trying to protect you, even if its method is clumsy. Thank you, anger, for trying to show me where my boundaries are. Step 3. Replace the pattern. Instead of, Suppressing or exploding, you practice containment and expression. Containment means feeling the feeling fully in your body without acting on it. Breathing into the sensation, allowing it to be there, watching it rise, peak, and fall like a wave. Expression means finding a safe, constructive outlet for the energy later. Screaming into a pillow for anger, writing a tear-stained letter for sadness, going for a run for anxiety. You are teaching your body that it is safe to feel, that emotions will not destroy you. This is how you drain the charge from the past, by feeling the old feelings in the safety of the present. And you can feel the space opening up inside you, can't you? A little more room to breathe. But we must go further, because the mind is a storytelling machine, and it has been telling you a very specific and very damaging story about who you are for your entire life, which is why the third weapon is the weapon of narrative reclamation. From the fragments of your past, your mind constructed a core identity, a foundational belief about yourself that everything else gets filtered through. Beliefs like, I am unlovable, I am not enough, I am a burden, I must be perfect to be safe. And this story is not a fact. It is a conclusion that a child came to with limited information and a survivalist's need to make sense of a confusing world. And you have been living your life as if this story is the absolute. Unchangeable truth, collecting every piece of evidence that supports it and dismissing every piece that contradicts it. Confirmation bias on a mission to prove your own unworthiness. Your task now is to become the author of your life again, to take back the pen from the frightened child and start writing a new narrative, one based on your adult values, your adult wisdom, your adult capacity for self-love. This isn't positive thinking. It's evidential thinking, collecting the counter-evidence, the moments where you were enough, where you were loved, where you were capable, and allowing that evidence to hold equal and then greater weight than the old story. Let me tell you about Ben. Ben believed with every fiber of his being that he was fundamentally too much, too intense, too emotional, too needy. A story forged by a mother who was emotionally absent and overwhelmed, who would literally leave the room when he cried as a toddler. So he learned to shrink, to make himself small and quiet and undemanding. And as an adult, this manifested as a deep terror of intimacy. He would sabotage relationships the moment he felt himself getting close, the moment he felt his real self starting to emerge, because he was convinced that if she really saw him, she would be repulsed and leave, just like his mother did. And his work was to consciously, deliberately gather evidence that he was. Lovable as he was, he started small, writing down one thing he appreciated about himself each day. He practiced sharing small, vulnerable things with a trusted friend and noting that the friend did not run away. He had to actively challenge the thought, I am too much, every time it arose, and replace it with, I am passionate and deep, and the right person will cherish that. It was painstaking work, like rewiring a house while still living in it. But over time, the new story, I am worthy of connection, began to feel more true than the old one, and he could finally let love in without self-sabotage. You've felt this story running in the background of your own mind, that silent, critical narration of your life. Step 1. Recognize the trigger. The trigger here is the activation of the old core belief. It usually gets triggered by a perceived failure or rejection. You get criticized, and the immediate thought is, see, I'm not enough. You feel lonely, and the thought is, it's because I'm unlovable. Catch that initial automatic thought, write it down if you can, shine a light on it. Step 2, reframe the story. Take that core belief and challenge it like a scientist. Is the thought, I am not enough, 100% true in all situations for all people? What is the evidence against it? Have there been times when I was in fact enough? What would I tell a friend who had this belief? This creates cognitive dissonance, the necessary friction for change. Step 3, replace the pattern. Actively install a new, empowering belief. create a mantra that directly counters the old story. If the old story is, I am a burden, the new one could be, my needs are valid and I deserve to take up space. Repeat this to yourself daily, especially when you feel the old story tugging at you. Write it on a sticky note. Your mind believes what you tell it repeatedly. You have been telling it an old, painful lie. Now you must tell it a new, compassionate truth. You're starting to see the architecture of your own prison. And in seeing it, you are already finding the keys. But we have one final essential weapon to forge, the weapon of embodied safety. Because all of this cognitive work will be for nothing if your body is still living in the past. If your nervous system is still stuck in a fight, flight, or freeze state, perpetually braced for a danger that is no longer here. And this is perhaps the most profound work, the work of teaching your body that the war is over, that it can stand down, that it is safe to inhabit this present moment fully. Your body is the ledger that holds the score of all your past traumas, big and small. The constant criticism that lives as tension in your shoulders. The abandonment that lives as a hollow. To use somatic practices to discharge that stored survival energy and recalibrate your system to safety. This is about moving out of your head and into your senses, about anchoring yourself in the here and now, where in this very moment, you are likely safe. You are likely not under immediate physical threat. But your body doesn't know that because it's still listening for the footsteps of the past. What no one tells you is that healing happens in the body, not just the mind. Pause. Bring your awareness to your body right now. Without judgment, just scan from your toes to the top of your head. You felt this disconnect before, this feeling of being a head floating on a body you ignore. Ask yourself this now. Where in my body do I feel the most tension? Send your breath to that place, just for a moment, as an experiment in kindness. Let's break it down. Step 1. Recognize the trigger. The trigger for this weapon is any sign of dysregulation, the heart pounding, the breath quickening, the muscles tensing, the feeling of dissociation or spacing out. This is your body's alarm system being activated. Step 2. Reframe the story. Instead of I'm having a panic attack, I'm losing control, reframe it to my body is having a survival response. It is trying to protect me. This is an old alarm ringing. I am safe right now. This separates you from the physiological reaction and gives you agency. Step 3. Replace the pattern. This is where you use somatic techniques to regulate your nervous system. The simplest and most powerful is the physiological sigh. Take a double inhale through the nose, filling your lungs completely, and then a long, slow exhale through the mouth. And do this 2 or 3 times. It actively reduces your heart rate and calms the stress response. Other practices include orienting, looking slowly around the room and naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This pulls you out of the internal movie of fear and into the present moment reality, or gentle, mindful movement, like swaying or stretching, to release the trapped energy. You are literally showing your body, through direct experience, that it is safe. This is the final piece of the puzzle, teaching the body what the mind is learning. And now, as we integrate these 4 weapons, awareness, emotional fluency, narrative reclamation, and embodied safety, something profound begins to shift. The internal war starts to quiet. The chaos begins to recede, not because the past has changed, but because your relationship to it has been utterly transformed. The exiled parts of you are being welcomed home, heard, comforted, and integrated. Sitting at the table of your consciousness, they are finally being fed with the compassion and understanding they were always starving for. And you begin to realize that the craziness was never a sign of brokenness, but a sign of a profound, intelligent, and ultimately healthy rebellion against an unbearable situation. It was your soul's refusal to completely annihilate itself. It was the part of you that fought to feel, to exist, to be real, even as the only way it knew how was through these disruptive, painful symptoms. And in honoring that, In thanking that part of you for its fierce, flawed protection, you set it free, and in doing so, you set yourself free. This is the integration. This is the freedom. It's not a destination where all pain ceases. It's a new way of traveling, a new relationship with yourself, where you are no longer a prisoner of your history, but the compassionate curator of your present, where triggers become teachers, where emotional storms become opportunities for deeper self-understanding, where the old, brutal story becomes a source of wisdom and strength, a testament to how far you've come, and you walk through the world differently, grounded in your body, fluent in your emotions, the author of your story, and aware of the subtle currents of your own mind. And when the old ghosts whisper, you don't panic, you don't run. You turn toward them with a gentle curiosity and say, I know you. You are a part of me, but you are not all of me. And we are safe now. This is the end of the old cycle and the beginning of a life lived not from a place of reaction, but from a place of profound, unshakable responsibility. The ability to respond to your own being with love. You feel it, don't you? The possibility, the spaciousness, the quiet, dawning realization that you were never going crazy. You were on a long, arduous, and ultimately heroic journey back to yourself. And you've just taken the most important step.